Hello, hello, good morning. It's Wednesday, February 3rd already. That's crazy to me, February 3rd. You know, my mom used to tell me the older you get, the quicker that time passes. And of course, mom was right. It goes super fast now. So I'm Wendy, and this is our weekly Lunch and Learn with Holistic and Well. And we are talking about loving someone with mental health issues. You know, folks that have got mental health problems, issues, diagnoses are not always the easiest people to be around. They're not always the easiest people to love. They're not always the easiest people to support. So this was a requested topic. So let's dig in and get into it. So a really great resource if you are dealing with somebody that has mental illness issues is there is a great resource, NAMI, and I want to say it's the National Alliance for Mental Illness. Let me look that up really quick. Yes, National Alliance on Mental Illness. They are a wonderful resource for either if you have the mental illness or you are supporting someone with the mental illness. They are a great resource. So a lot of information I gather from them to utilize to share with you guys. So first and foremost, what's really important, and this is a philosophy that I practice all the time in my with my clients and in my practice, is that it's important to not have this perspective of I have to fix the person. I say all the time, we're not cars, we're not chairs, we're not a piece of furniture. You know, we are human beings and we don't get fixed. We learn how to maneuver through things and we learn how to manage things. So the quicker that you understand that someone that you might love has mental health issues and that we're not trying to fix them, that you're going to be a lot more patient and a lot more understanding and a lot more flexible with what's going on in the world. So don't try to fix somebody. Be understanding that they are a human being. And it's also important for you to be able to learn how to accept their diagnosis. And that can be a tough thing because different diagnoses come with different bullet points and different things and behaviors. So it's important to be able to accept that diagnosis. And being able to educate yourself on that diagnosis is super, super important. The more you know about it, the more that you can understand and be flexible and be able to support and validate that person that is experiencing that mental illness. And of course, I'm saying all this with the assumption that we're working with somebody, we're dealing with somebody that has the ability to have clarity. So like depression, anxiety, maybe even like OCD, even like schizophrenia. There's a lot of people that have schizophrenia or schizo stuff that they have clarity, especially if there's no like hallucinations or delusions, then they've got clarity and they are able to have that interaction with you. When you've got folks that don't have that clarity, either because they're under the influence of a substance, or they are having delusions, or they are having hallucinations, that's a really hard one because then they don't have that sense of clarity. But you can still love them and support them by understanding what their diagnosis is and what their illness is, so that another great point is that you don't take things personal. That you don't take personal if someone has really heightened paranoia, that they feel that you are in a scheme against them, or that they constantly talk about the world is against them, or they constantly talk about that people are after them. You can understand that that's not personal to you and that that's just part of their disease. One of the things I talk about a lot with clients is to really make the comparison that if someone like had diabetes or heart disease, or if they had a broken bone, what would be the grace and the flexibility and the compassion you would extend to them? And that gives you an idea of being able to say, okay, well, if someone's diabetic and they are going into like ketosis or something like that, being able to understand that that's just part of their physical illness and that's what's going on with them. So it's important to be able to understand that a lot of times these mental health diagnoses, they're going to manifest and look a different way. So being able to not take things personally, understand the diagnosis, understand what like goes along with the diagnosis in terms of like behaviors and things you can anticipate is super important. Because the more you know, the more prepared you are for when, you know, the shit kind of hits the fan, when things happen. Definitely understanding that you have zip, zero, zilch, no control. Something to understand is that you have control over one person and one person only, and that is you and you only. So you have no control over your loved one that is struggling with a particular diagnosis. You have no control. And as soon as you let that concept go, you know, I have moms that call in for their adult children. And I'm not saying you don't support your adult children. You absolutely do. But one of the first questions I ask is, are they open to the whole process of therapy? And if they say, well, you know, I told them if they're going to stay with me that they're going to have to go into therapy. And I mean, giving those ultimatums sound good on paper, but they're not realistic and they don't work, because the person that's receiving therapy has to be ready and they have to buy into that process. So understand you have no control, none. You're done. It's over. This person that is struggling with mental health issues, they are going to act on their own accord and they're going to do what's in line with that mental illness until they are ready to receive the support and to receive those services from a professional. So just know and understand that so that you don't get frustrated with the fact that you're not able to control the situation, because you're not going to be able to. Let's see. It's really important to understand the mind-body spirit connection, and that when you've got one of those elements that is out of balance, that is not in a healthy space, that really impacts those other two spaces. So with mental health issues, that very much could be that someone does not feel like getting up and moving around and being active. So there's usually weight gain with mental health issues. And part of that is because there's a lack of motivation, there's a lack of having that clarity of like how this would benefit, but also a lot of times the meds that they're on, one of the side effects is weight gain. You know, so when you've got weight gain, then now that bleeds over into, good morning, that bleeds over into health issues impacting mental health issues, mental health issues impacting health issues. So then now we have the triangle of the mind, body, spirit. And when there's a mental health issue, it almost always means that there's an imbalance with the spiritual part of that person as well, because those three are very much interconnected. So being able to understand and have patience for that connection, and that someone that you love is in a space that's dark and that they're trying to get out of. Again, it's like if they were diabetic and they were having problems managing their sugar. We wouldn't be mad about that. We would understand that that's part of their illness and what can I do to support that. But it would very much impact the mind and the spirit if they have that physical issue as well. So mind, body, spirit. So understanding you can't fix people, you have no control over other people, understanding the diagnosis, knowing what that looks like is very important. And of course, understanding the mind, body, spirit in relationship to mental health is so important. Also knowing and understanding that when there's one mental health diagnosis, there's usually something else lurking. They kind of run in pairs, and it's dual diagnosis is what that is called. And So if you have anxiety, you usually have depression. If you have depression, you usually have anxiety. Now, one of them might be the primary diagnosis, and then you've got this other tag-along diagnosis that hangs out with them. But usually with bipolar, there's depression. Usually when there's schizophrenia, there's anxiety. They just run in more than, it's very, very uncommon to have just like one diagnosis of depression. Because there's just the attributes of anxiety that go along with that hang out. So understanding that there's going to be more than just one diagnosis, and that's going to look a particular way in terms of like behaviors and how they interact with you and what they do to support themselves and help themselves, and what their outlook is going to be. And again, if they have clarity, then they are usually able to check into that and be able to do some things to support themselves. If there's no clarity, and think of depression as like having a pair of glasses that you've smeared like lotion or oil on, and then put them on and try to look out. That is a very good descriptor. That was actually a descriptor that was given to me by someone with depression of what their outlook was. And it's very smeared, and lines are not clear. And it's just hard to find that space of clarity if you are really struggling with being able to see the world in a clear space. So understanding that is super important, that there's going to be probably more than one diagnosis going on at the same time. So being able to understand that and know what that looks like is really, really important. Now, if you're dealing with a situation of where someone does not have clarity, and that's either because of their meds, they're not on their meds, or their meds are sporadic in how they take them, they're not consistent in how they take them, or if there's a substance abuse issue, that is going to look a lot different, especially moving forward with the rest of these concepts of like how you can love someone and support someone with mental health issues. Because if someone is under the influence of a substance, alcohol, drugs, if they're having hallucinations, if they're having delusions, they are not in their right mind. They're in their left mind. That's a running joke. So understanding that is important. Substance abuse is going to be a totally different beast, but you can still apply some of these concepts. So a big one is to be able to learn how to empathize, but set very clear boundaries. Empathize, but set very clear boundaries. So if you're dealing with someone that has clarity and they are present in the here and now, and they're able to have rational conversations, and they're able to do critical thinking, then you're able to have conversations around boundaries. And that looks like maybe, these are the things I'm willing to do for you. These are the things I'm not willing to do for you. If you've got someone that is an adult that's living at home with you, being able to set boundaries on like their coming and going, being able to set boundaries on what your expectations are in the household in terms of like what their contribution is, either like physically and maintaining the household, good morning, or also like the monetary contribution, what that looks like. Being able to set those boundaries is very, very possible when someone has clarity. Now, if you're dealing with someone that is under the influence of a drug, alcohol, they are struggling with delusions, hallucinations, that's going to be a little bit more tricky, because if they're not able to do that critical thinking, and I know that we've all had a conversation with someone that was drunk, and the circles that we just talked around, and they were like, just being able to get them to understand where you're coming from is its own challenge. So think about if you're trying to like set these very serious, realistic boundaries with somebody that's under the influence, you're not going to do it. If someone's having hallucinations, you're not going to do it. If someone's having delusions, you're not going to do it. So understanding that is super important, but you can set boundaries with yourself about what you are and you're not going to do with that person. And so maybe that looks like, if somebody is waking up in the middle of the night and they're screaming because they feel like there's someone in the corner, and you have address that there's nobody in the corner, then you don't have to get up and be a part of that hallucination with that person. Because probably they're not going to really understand that you're there anyway. If somebody's under the influence of alcohol or drugs, that you are not going to support certain behaviors. You're not going to be a part of certain behaviors. You're not going to contribute to that. And being able to maybe have those conversations when they are sober, so that when that comes about again, that you're able to articulate that, and they already know where you're coming from. So you're just like, you know what, we've talked about this. I know that you're under the influence, and these are the things that I'm going to do. These are the things I'm not going to do. So it's a little bit different beast when somebody's under the influence of something, whether it's meds or alcohol or drugs, for sure. So being able to set boundaries, but also being able to empathize and being able to validate them. That's really, really important. If somebody is struggling with anxiety and depression, and those are the two biggies, so I say those a lot, being able to really say, I don't even know what that feels like. Tell me, explain to me what that feels like. I read something the other day and I really loved it, and I'm going to utilize it, and I've been sharing it, is that when someone begins to unload on you verbally, or they say, I need to talk, or I need support, a lot of times we go into like, okay, this fix mode. I need to fix. I need to be able to bring something to the table and fix and give it to them. But instead, challenge yourself to ask them this one question. Do you need to be comforted, or do you want solutions? And that really releases you from a lot of the mental or emotional obligation you might feel to that person because of where they're at. But being able to clarify, what do you need from me right now? How can I support you right now? Rather than making the assumption of what that looks like. Because we all do it. It took me a while to master that skill set in interacting with my clients, of being able to find out, what is it that you need from me right now? Because sometimes people just need to be heard, and they just need to know that someone is listening and being able to understand where they're coming from. And maybe they don't have the solution, or they don't know what to do, but they're able to validate and empathize where they're coming from. So that one question of, do you need comfort, or do you want a solution? Because then if they want a solution, then you can begin to have that conversation, that dialogue with them of, have you tried this? Have you done this? Well, this is what I do when I'm feeling a particular way. Or I saw this on social media. Or my cousin shared this with me about her doctor said do this. And then you can begin to share resources and have those conversations around that. But do you need comfort, or do you need solutions? It is a super great way to be able to have that interaction with someone, and it feels like you're empowering them and you're supporting them rather than trying to fix or change them. Super important. Let's see here. Another really tough one is being able to respect their choices. And again, this is coming from a place of someone that is not under the influence of something, but being able to respect their choices if they have the clarity to make those choices. There are a lot of people that have chosen to not be medicated if they have a chronic and persistent mental health diagnosis. I share all the time. My mom is bipolar, and my mom was unmedicated bipolar. And that was challenging as a child for me. As an adult and as someone that supports people with mental health issues, if someone comes into my space and we are working together and they say to me, I really don't want to be on meds, then I honor that and I respect that. And we talk about what that is going to look like, the good, the bad, the ugly. We look at what are some alternatives. But at the end of the day, I have to respect their choice that they don't want to be on medication. And that goes hand in hand with, okay, so if you don't want to be on medication, then that means that there's certain boundaries put in place. And that if you begin to exhibit these particular behaviors, this is what's going to be the aftermath. This is what's going to be the action-reaction piece to that. So if they don't want to be on meds, then you have to respect that. You have to respect their choices. Their choices altogether. And maybe they don't want to go to the doctor. Maybe they don't want to go to, professional support. Maybe they don't want to go to work. Whatever that decision is that they are making, you have to respect their decision, because at the end of the day, you don't have control over them. But if you're able to sit by and support them in that, empathize with them and validate what they're feeling, that doesn't mean you give a big stamp of approval for everything that they might do around their diagnosis. If someone decides that they're not going to go to work and they ultimately get fired, then you can still set boundaries in that situation of, okay, I get it that it's a struggle to get up in the morning. I can't imagine what that feels like, to just want to be in bed all the time. But you're at the place of where you've made that decision, and this is now the aftermath of it. So, like, what does it look like to move forward? Because you have this date to move from my space. A lot of adult children still live in their homes with their parents, and I hear a lot of parents struggle with being able to set those boundaries in place and being able to put those expectations in place because, they feel bad or they feel sorry. And the worst thing that you can provide to a person that's struggling with mental illness is to feel sorry for them. They do not need that. That is not beneficial to them. They need someone that can empathize, validate them, set very clear boundaries, and be able to support whatever their decisions are within reason if they have clarity. Ask clarifying questions. If someone is beginning to talk with you or share with you, ask open-ended questions so that you can really begin to understand what they're experiencing, what is going on in their mind, their rationale. So instead of saying things like, how are you, are you feeling good today? Or is today going to be a good day? Being able to ask questions like, what's on your agenda today? Or, why was today a good day? What happened that today was a good day? What was different today? What was different that it was a bad day? Being able to ask those open-ended questions that provides that space for them to be able to have the dialogue and have the conversations with someone who's actually listening and being non-judgmental. And that's, I didn't say that, and I definitely need to put that out there, is no, there can be no judgments, because at the end of the day, the old adage, cliche, whatever it is that until you've walked a mile in someone's shoes, you don't know what their experiences are. And as someone that has dealt with and continues to deal with chronic anxiety, there are days that are wonderful and there are days that suck majorly. Now I've learned to manage the days that aren't as great, and I'm able to really put things in place to take care of myself a lot more consistently than I did, say, when I was in my 20s. But there are still those days. So the worst thing to say to someone is, just get over it. Just move on. Just suck it up. Just do it. Just do what you got to do. Because we're not trying to hear that. That's not, no, that doesn't work. So if there's days I'm struggling, I've rescheduled client appointments because I can't be the best support to someone else if I'm struggling supporting myself right now. And I'm very open and transparent with my own chronic mental health issues. So, clients don't take that personally. And I share that with them. If someone's got borderline personality disorder, and so rejection or changes within a relationship are hard for them, I share that with them. It's like, hey, there might be days that I'm struggling to take care of me. And so if I reschedule an appointment, that's no reflection on you. And being very, very transparent so that they can understand that. And that's an important thing to do, is be very transparent with someone that has mental illness, so that, again, they're not taking things personally, they're not making assumptions, which is easy to do. When you have anxiety, it's nothing to feel like the whole world is against you. You've got that negative self-talk, and you've got these thinking errors, and you are in a a very dark space. So being able to really be proactive and not be that person that is judgmental or is making assumptions is super important. But really being able to ask those questions to clarify. So what's going on that you're not feeling good? Are you able to explain to me what's going on inside your head? Like what's happening that you don't feel well, so that they can be able to hopefully dig down and be able to explain that. So of course, if you're dealing with someone under the influence, asking clarifying questions is like talking to a 2-year-old, because they don't have the ability to do critical thinking. So that conversation is going to look a lot different. The best thing to do with somebody that's under the influence is to let them sober up in a safe space, and maybe, that's locking them in the house so that they can sober up. Maybe that's making a phone call to, maybe they need to go into detox. Maybe making a phone call to whoever their support system is, if it's, if they live with someone else, but being able to get them to a safe place so that they can sober up and then begin to have some conversations, because otherwise it's just like pounding your head against the wall. I already kind of said don't be reactive and don't internalize. If someone says or does something, don't take it personal. A lot of times folks that are struggling with mental illness, they don't realize, or they're not in tune. There's not a lot of self-awareness until they really begin to work on themselves. But if they say something or do something, don't internalize it, that they meant that specifically the way that it may have sounded or come about, or the way maybe an action looked like. A lot of times folks that have got mental illness are very me-oriented, and they're very self-absorbed because they are in survival mode. Think about if you're in the middle of the ocean and you are doing your doggy paddle and you're floating to try to stay alive, the last thing you're thinking about is what the other person is experiencing or what they're going through. And that's a very real analogy, is that if you are struggling with your mental illness and you're in a dark space, that being that support to someone else might not be realistic at all. So don't expect that, and don't take it personal if it doesn't happen. Rejecting stereotypes and stigmas. That is super important. I'm actually in the middle of writing a blog around stigmas and PTSD, and understanding that there are stigmas around mental health. A lot of times folks with depression get dubbed lazy. Folks that have anxiety get dubbed with being crazy. Don't buy into the stereotypes and the stigmas. Do your own research. Understand what they are experiencing. And that was that resource I gave at the very beginning, NAMI, and the National Alliance for Mental Health Illness, or Mental Illness, is a great resource. There's another one that's, I want to say the acronym is SAMSA. Yeah, SAMSA, SAMHSA, and that is, I think my Wi-Fi turned off. It did. How dare it turn off on its own? But I want to say that substance abuse. Now I have to look it up because it's going to bother me. SAMSA. Okay. So I must have a horrible signal, but I've got a signal on my tablet. Thank you. Okay, I don't know why I can't reach that. Where's my... And that's on as well. Okay, I don't know. But I want to say it's Substance Abuse and Mental Health Association. But they're another great place to get resources. Tons of resources. I think they even do like classes for the public. They have support groups. They have a lot that they're able to offer for folks that are struggling and for folks that love people who are struggling. Let me restart my phone, see if I can get a signal. All right, so that kind of dovetails right into that seek support and resources. You know, if you're someone that is involved with someone that has mental health issues, make sure you have a support system. Make sure you have your own separate space that you can be able to talk, and you're able to reach out, and you're able to be heard and validated and nurtured, because it is not a day at the park dealing with someone that has chronic mental health issues. It takes a toll. It takes a huge toll on someone that supports. And especially like if you live together, you cohabitate, you know, you're married, if it's your child, your adult child, then that it's a lot. So make sure you have got a support system in place. And again, seek out those resources. There are a lot out there. I have some on my website. I have a client resource tab, and you can look under, I want to say community support, I believe is what it's under. If not, click around and you'll find it under client resources. But there's a lot of resources out there available for people that are experiencing mental health issues and for people who support those who are experiencing them. And then kind of a final thought is that there are some days that are great, and then there are some days that are not great. And I don't like to label them as bad, because then our brain interprets that a different way. I have to still look up that acronym because it's bothering me. I like to give accurate information. Let's see. SAMSA, there it is. Okay. Finally, dang. Yeah, even SAMSA has like homeless and addiction support. It's for folks that are struggling with substance abuse. So it's the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. SAMSA. Great resources through them. There's resources for folks that experience sexual assault. There's RAIN, MOXA. If someone has got autism, there's a lot of resources, lots of kids resources. There's teen resources. I came across one yesterday that I really liked. It was called, I think, Raising Your Teen. RaisingTeensToday.com. Really, really great website with a lot of resources. So there's a lot out there. You just have to really plug in some Google searches and find it, or go to my website and I've got a lot of these listed. But understanding that folks that are struggling with mental health stuff, there's going to be days that are great and there's going to be days that are not so great. And really being able to not internalize it and not take it personally is super important. I have a client whose mom is struggling with dementia, and she's not fully there where she's totally checked out, but she's checked out probably half of the time. And we've done a lot of work around her being able to ensure that she can take care of herself so that she can continue to caretake her mom. And that's a really tough space to be in. I think they call it like the sandwich generation, where you are either still like raising teen kids or young adults, and then you also are caretaking your parents. Like, that's a lot of stress, and that is a lot to manage. So the first set of action for her was to create some self-care, and what does that look like, and how are you going to implement that, and being able to put that in place. And so we had to do some resource mining and found some things for her. But I remember when I was a teenager, my great-grandmother had dementia. And dementia is one that just, Alzheimer's just ravages a person's body. I mean, the person that is diagnosed, they really mentally have the good end of the deal, in my opinion, because they're literally checked out. And I wasn't really super close with my great-grandmother, but I remember going to the hospital and she had just become skin and bones, and she was very verbally aggressive with like the nursing staff, and even with us as her family. She didn't know who we were anymore, and she just checked in and out. And it was really hard to watch my mom and my grandmother have to caretake her and to continue to interact with her, because it's very hurtful for your family that you've loved forever to not know who you are anymore. So that's that piece of not taking it personally and being able to have your own support system and being able to have those resources. So that's kind of the down and dirty for loving someone with mental health issues. Jen, it looks like you're my lone warrior. Man, you are a trooper. Any questions? I know that this was a topic you had kind of thrown out there. Are there any specific questions you have that I can answer for you, or that we can process or talk through that would be helpful? Because substance abuse is, and I think your question was supporting someone that has self-imposed afflictions. I think if I'm remembering it, so that I'm assuming that's like drug and alcohol, I think is what we clarified. And that's a hard one. So yeah, the not taking it personally is the hardest struggle. Absolutely. I had a very close friend in my late 20s that had a crack cocaine addiction. And he was the sweetest person. Hardworking, loving, kind, fun to be around. But he just struggled. So yes, self-imposed and in denial. Thankfully, I don't live with her, so I've been able to set boundaries. Yeah, if you don't live with someone that's going through that, it's definitely a lot more simple for you. But yeah, if you live with someone that's going through that and they're in denial, absolutely. And so my friend that I'm speaking of that had the crack addiction, he was in denial somewhat, and felt he was managing it, and that it was nothing for him to get paid and smoke all of his paycheck up over the weekend, and then not have any money to last him for the next 2 weeks till he got paid again. And that was really hard, watching him self-destruct and him spiral down with that addiction. And there are particular drugs, crack cocaine, methamphetamines, heroin, that change your actual brain chemistry and change the way that things fire and the way that you are able to think. And so then it becomes a space of, this person has this addiction, and until they're really ready to embrace support and being able to get to that lowest point, and for whatever reason, that's just, if someone's struggling with addiction, they have to get to that bottom level where they have no one and nowhere to go that's left. Because someone with addiction will completely exploit all of their resources and all of the people that support them, especially if those people don't know how to set boundaries, which a lot of people struggle with setting boundaries, and they don't know how to communicate with that person about what their needs and expectations are for the relationship. And so a lot of times people with addiction will take people down with them in terms of like borrowing money, using their car. I knew someone that had addiction, that they would borrow someone else's car frequently, and they would like pawn it, hawk it to the dope man and get drugs. And so then that person would have to come and pay that debt to get their car back. And it's like, how many times are you going to do that? You know, because as long as you continue to let them borrow your car, that's a resource for them to be able to go get drugs and get high. And they're not going to stop and say, hey, wait, this is wrong, because they're caught up in the cycle of being under the influence of something, and it is an illness. So being able to understand that is super important, and being able to really digest that whatever they do or say is not personal. It is not meant to hurt you. It is not meant to inflict pain. It's just that's their way of interacting. That's their way of managing and maneuvering through the illness, because they haven't made a commitment to do something different. They haven't figured out to do something different. You know, so I'm glad that you have been able to identify that and understand that, because that's so important to understand, is that it's not personal. It's not personal at all. I had a family member that was addicted to heroin, and the struggle was real for her. And watching the interaction with her kids, and you know, her kids went in and out of the system, and it was tough for her to. She was not able to. She ended up ODing. She was never able to be clean and sober for a long period of time, and really get a hold of that. And heroin is one of those that, man, if you dare to test the waters to see what it's gonna feel like, that, you know, there's some folks that do use it recreationally, but the more that you use it, the more that it changes your brain chemistry, and eventually it will become an issue that you're not going to be able to just do recreationally and do for fun, because it's either going to kill you, literally, or it's going to kill you slowly. Either way. So very real. Any other questions, Jen, or any other thoughts, or do you need any resources or anything like that I can help with? SAMSA would be a great one. Let's see. Substance abuse resources for families. So that's a great Google search term. You know, there's going to always be local stuff, but SAMSA is a nationwide. And then drugabuse.gov, that's a great one. AAAP is for addiction. So yeah, there's a lot of them out there. You are very welcome. I've been putting these on, they're on my website and YouTube as well. So, you know, if you want to share with anyone, or if you, I don't think you've missed one yet. You are a trooper. You are awesome. I always appreciate your support. So that is going to be the gist of loving someone with mental illness. Next week, what is the topic for next week? I have it in here. Ooh, relationships and anxiety. That's what we're going to talk about next week. What sucks is it's alcohol, and it's widely accepted and all over the place. Lots of excuses. Absolutely. You know, that's the thing with alcohol, is that because it is legal and it's cheap, you know, you can go buy a tall can of beer, or you can, you know, get the little individual shots. I mean, you can spend $10 and get enough liquor to get pissy drunk. I've seen folks do it, and because it is everywhere and it is available no matter where you're at, and you know, you've got liquor that's easy to conceal. You know, we all know vodka doesn't really have a smell, looks like water, until someone like is excessive with it, you know, you begin to smell it on them. But otherwise, it's just one of those things that can be super, super, almost like a fog effect of like, then, you know, you realize, oh crap, this is what's going on with this person. And so it is tough, and it's definitely one of those things that is very accepted and swept under the rug in terms of, you know, I think it's all great to have memes on social media that are fun, but when we begin to really look at like creating these memes and these running jokes and stereotypes of, let me just have a couple glasses of wine, it end up being 2 bottles, and you're doing that several times a week, you really got to look at like, this is now a problem and hindering your life. But again, until people are ready to accept that and move forward, it's tough. So anywho, I'll get off my soapbox. Thank you for your support, ma'am. I appreciate you. So next week we'll tune in again and talk about relationships and anxiety. So have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll check back in. Take care.